nowadays we have kind of get ready videos with me on TikTok, but you really pioneered that by selling in infomercials, right?
Yeah, infomercials.
And
it was like one of my students was in my class, and she said, I know this group of guys that sell products on TV. And I said, oh, wow, like I have a really great idea of how to sell cosmetics on TV. I did not. I was sort of winging that.
I am so excited to have you, Victoria. Welcome to Reclaiming.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
It's hard to believe that we've only known each other for 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know, because it really does feel like lifelong friends.
Yeah, exactly. Or sisters. Or I was
Yeah.
thinking we both sort of, I think, have overcome these pretty extraordinary tragedies, which I
Yes.
think also meant we kind of had this shared trauma language.
Yeah.
And we both love to laugh. Laughter's like never far from a moment, even
Yeah.
when it's a bad moment.
Yeah,
And
a sense
so-
of humor. You got to have a sense
Yeah,
of humor to
yeah.
get through it all.
And you laugh a lot. I mean, I find
Yeah.
when we're playing mahjong, if you start laughing, I can't look at you because
I
then
know.
I'll start
know.
laughing and not stop. I don't think I know anybody who wears more hats than you do of all the things you do and all you've accomplished. It's such a long list. I have to read it.
Okay.
And so I'm just like, because it's amazing, all the different ways I've learned so much from you around reclaiming from so many of your experiences and I'm in awe, So
thank
you are Victoria Jackson, a makeup mogul, co-owner of the bookstore Godmothers, author of 5 books, including We All Worry Now What, that we're going to chat on later.
Yep.
Co-founder of a foundation to support families with the rare disease NMO, neuromyelitis. Did I say that right?
Neuromyelitis optica, you
Okay.
certainly did.
Thank you. Have gotten 3 drugs through the FDA approval process, which is unbelievably difficult. And you did so by getting the drug companies to work together, which is unheard of.
Right?
There's more. You've been inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame, and by Gloria Steinem, no less. Met and were honored by the late Pope. Are a devoted daughter, grandma, mom, wife, friend. I don't know if I missed anything.
Oh, no, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm already tired.
I find it's so easy for me to be self-critical, and I have to work really hard to kind of step into moments of being proud of myself or something having gone well. And I wondered if for you, you're sitting there and you hear this list, are you able to take it all in? What does that feel like for you?
I mean, I take it in, but, it's so much of it, like that whole little house of, accomplishments, things, life's journey, however I want to frame it, has been built on a lot of low self-esteem. Really building my company originally, even getting into the beauty business, was more like, oh my gosh, everything I do actually has always been like, oh, if I can do this, you can do it. So I've really suffered with that. And yet it's kind of through all the adversity and all the challenges and all the self-doubt and the low sense of myself, I've managed to accomplish all these things.
I have found kind of going into my 50s that there are just certain things about myself that I always used to hammer myself on, and now I just accept it. And so when you're talking about having self-esteem issues, which is shocking to me that you would still have, having accomplished all that, do you feel, is that something you're still trying to work on shaping and improving, or have you just accepted that and gone, okay, this just happens to be my thing and I'm going to keep doing everything as I was doing it, if that makes sense?
I mean, you look at, I'm always looking for improvement, and, I am who I am. I'm going into you're going in your 50s here. I'm going into my 70s.
Woohoo!
And it's kind of like, whoa. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of self-acceptance at this point. And I know that I'm somebody who really struggles with, from time to time, depression and anxiety. And that is just something that I'm much more gentle with myself and show myself a little more grace that, okay, today may be more challenging, based on what I'm dealing with that day. And I navigate through it, and I know that it will pass and it will morph into something different. And I have better tools in the toolbox to figure it out. And I think because of that, I have a lot of empathy toward people that struggle with it. And We All Worry Now, what really was written as, again, everything has always been like a guidebook of how I did it. I sort of identify what the issues are, and then I try to, give you, here's my little manual of how I navigated it, whether it was in, doing makeup.
Right.
It was kind of, my first book was called Redefining Beauty. And Redefining Beauty was all about, here's how to make your eyes bigger and your lips fuller and all the things everybody wanted to know.
We should say that you, sorry to interrupt, but that you did my makeup today.
Yes. And wow, don't your eyes look bigger already? You look so beautiful.
Oh,
but my second book was called Make Up Your Life, which is more like, okay, here's how I did it. But now that, you've got these instructions of, how to look great, what are you going to go out and do? Make up your life, like really go out there and kick some ass. So it's always been like, here's what I'm working on, and then here's the real how-to piece of it.
Yeah.
And why it matters.
Right. So just like take me back, because if I remember correctly, you started your makeup business out of your garage.
Yep, in my garage.
You had gone to beauty school. And so what's the timeline of kind of going to beauty school, becoming a makeup artist?
So it was in the 70s that I went to beauty school, and I didn't go to college. So I was really looking for something as a creative person that I am. What could I do? Where could I go? Knowing also I didn't have money, so I needed a little scholarship. So I went to the Maranello School of Beauty, and, where you go through 1,600 hours of learning like makeup and hair and, the whole thing. And I knew that I wanted to do a certain kind of makeup. I wasn't naturally talented or gifted or this amazing artist.
Wow.
I really had to learn how to do it. But I wanted to do things that were more natural and more like women not using makeup as a mask, because think of late 70s as I went into 80s, there's a lot of makeup. Even when I started making my foundation, my makeup in my garage, it came because I couldn't find, there was scarcity in the marketplace of nothing in this like neutral beige tones, yellow undertones, more natural looking foundations.
Right.
Everything was pinks and oranges, kind of like old Hollywood
so
land.
for all skin tones, like it was just very rudimentary.
Yeah. So I started like literally taking a little bit of this, a little bit of that, making up pots and pans and making my own foundation. And then I, again, wanting to teach what I was learning, I started to work as a working makeup artist. And after doing that for a while, I decided I wanted to teach a class. And I taught an extension class at UCLA for 10 years.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which was every quarter, I would have about 50 students signed up. And a lot of times you'd see like guys that were taking the class, right? Just because they wanted to meet the gals, right? So I would be like, so you want to be a makeup artist? And they're like, oh, yeah, right. Yeah, sure. So it really, that's when I realized I could create a product. I had all these students. I could see, what people were responding to. It was a great,
Interesting.
My little test market.
Your incubator.
Yeah. And then I started selling my foundations where all the Hollywood makeup artists went. And my line was called Victoria Jackson Beauty Basics.
Nowadays we have kind of get ready videos with me on TikTok, but you really pioneered that by selling in infomercials, right?
Yeah, infomercials.
And
it was like one of my students was in my class, and she said, I know this group of guys that sell products on TV. And I said, oh, wow, like I have a really great idea of how to sell cosmetics on TV. I did not. I was sort of winging that. And I thought about it. And she goes, really, I'd like to get you a meeting with them. I said, yeah, that'd be great. And that's how I started. I did my first infomercial. And I always say this is really great for anybody listening and having, like, you think of all the things that, go wrong or like you're so afraid. My low self-esteem, which has always been right in the forefront for me right there. I was really, having been a makeup artist, now I was going to be, like the CEO of a cosmetic company. And it's like, what would she look like and dress like? And, when I showed up for my first infomercial, there was the cinematographer. We were actually shooting in film in those days. And he looked at me and he said, and there was a whole group around, and he goes, Victoria, I have photographed the most beautiful people in the world. And I have found there's two types of women. There's women with great beauty and there's women with great brains. And you are a woman with great brains. And I was just like, oh, wow.
Fuck.
Okay. Dude, thank
Yeah.
you. So he goes, I was just like, and everyone looked at me like, oh my gosh. And I was like, well, then I just know you're going to make me look just the best I can look, you know. And it was so funny, like cut to, they had me in a director's chair, like out in the parking lot, like he goes, so we're going to get you some air and we're going to, I was like, and cars are whizzing by and I'm, going, okay, Victoria, when you go back in the studio and you get on that stage, you're just going to, like, your worst fears have happened. Like somebody was kind of saying, you're not that attractive. And I was like, I'm going to get back in there and I'm just going to sell what I know is this amazing product that I've created, like practically in my garage. And we did $1 million a week on our first airing of that show.
Oh my
and basically
gosh.
it never stopped. I did.
I mean, that would be a lot to sell in a week in today's times.
Yes.
And this was in the 70s or the 80s now?
The 80s. Now I'm doing my first infomercial.
But still, that's a fuck ton of money.
Yeah, it is. And, to get people to, infomercials were new. Nobody was selling color cosmetics on TV. They were always saying, even my partners at the time were like, I don't know if this is going to work. Women need to see them and touch them and, put them on their face. And how are they going to buy through TV?
Yeah.
And it went on. I did 13 years of infomercials and I did over 600 products that I created.
Wow. How did you find in yourself where you're holding the self-esteem issues and you were just telling us about how you're kind of talking to yourself, but where you found the strength or the wisdom to kind of tell the self-esteem part that probably wanted to, I'm imagining, not do something. But I mean, you push through. You push through so much and so many times. I mean, I know a lot of bits and pieces of your story, but I don't think I ever had a sense before of how many times you had to trust your instinct.
Yeah. Well, it's also like, there was a lot of, fake it till you make it or act as if and then eventually, when I was not questioning anymore, how would a CEO look or dress or sound like, or at one point I just realized I am that person now, So I have a thing where if I can see it in my mind, this is just me, not even if I believe it, I just have to see the picture. So I create the image in my head or the story that I want to see it all in pictures. And then I just work to create it.
Yeah. When you visualize, was it sort of just the image or did you feel like you were in there? Were there smells or sounds or?
Yeah, it was always that. It was really manifesting. And then when the bad things would happen or you'd have the 20 setbacks or whatever, or everybody going, this is never going to work. I always pictured, oh, you know what? This is just the part of the story where at some point I'm going to be sitting with, the time I was always using Oprah. I'll be sitting with Oprah and I'm just going to be telling her this that didn't work out right now because that's just going to be part of my success story. So I was almost like having to constantly read in my mind my own success story. So even when it didn't exist at that moment, but I was always, doing that so that it would keep me going on.
I love that idea actually of writing your own success story.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I found so interesting about you is at some point you started to go into women's prisons.
Yeah.
And also started doing work with women women in prisons around makeup.
Yeah.
And that I want to hear about that. But that it was also this kind of like part of that came from you feeling like an ambassador, a goodwill ambassador for women.
Yeah.
So, I mean, talk to me about all that, like how that came in, that idea of goodwill ambassador for women and then going into the prisons.
Yeah, I always wanted to be able to give back. And at the time, like where now I can do service and I can, maybe write a check. At the time, I couldn't write a check. I didn't have the money to write the check. So I wanted to just be of service. And that's where I really created what I now call and think about as the power of mascara. Where I went into the jails, my sister was working for the sheriff's department. Okay. She was in charge of psychology department,
Oh.
and she ran that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on the other end. I said, I want to go into the jails and see if I can, help the women that are there in this whole look better, feel better. These would be women that would be getting out at some point. And she connected me, and I started that program, which I did for 20 years.
Wow.
Going to Sybil Brand and then to downtown LA, Twin Towers. And I'm really, really claustrophobic, so that was really hard. And I would work with 100 women at a time.
Wow.
It was really amazing to see. We would say things like, okay, you're going to be all dressed up and maybe nowhere to go today, but you will be when you get out. And it was really changing a philosophy where I remember saying when I first started, like, what do you like your makeup to say? And one of the gals was like, I like my makeup to say, pull over, So it's like, great. Okay. Well, I don't know that served well. So let's just we're going to change that up a little bit. And it was more like, how about like self-respect? And it was so fascinating. Watch the energy of the room, how it would change over the 2 hours that I was there, where some of what you would think would be the toughest looking gals with like the teardrops and the tattoos and all of that, at the end of the 2 hours, they're like, does this look okay? Or, it changed the energy in the room, and
Do you think it was that you were seeing them beyond the label of what they had of being in prison?
Yeah. I mean, people would say to me while I was doing this, they'd go, well, aren't you afraid? Are there murderers in there? And I, early on in my mind, I don't care. Like, I'm just not going to go there. I'm not going to start judging. I wasn't there to do that.
I know a lot of people who do good works.
Yeah.
And I think what really surprised me about the work that you had done there was because you yourself had experienced something really traumatic and violent.
Yes.
When you were a teenager.
Yeah.
And we don't have to go there if you want to talk about it at all.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I definitely was always, I think I was clearly born a worrier and born scared, and always did have that sort of kind of foreboding, that feeling of somebody was going to get me and something bad was going to happen to me. And it did. When I was 17, I was a victim of the pillowcase rapist in California. God knows, too. There's been 2 pillowcase rapists. I was a victim, unfortunately, of the pillowcase rapist. That was in the 70s. And it was really, my whole family was home. It turned out I was the only victim. And because I'd always been so afraid of something happening, I had an older brother at the time that would, make jokes or try to scare me.
Yeah.
And one night, when I thought he was scaring me, it was somebody else scaring me, and it was the pillowcase rapist. And it was brutal. It was bad. And I thought my whole family was killed, and they were all asleep. So, you kind of never come back from something like that in terms of claustrophobia, because of the positionings I was in, and a lot of it is just part of that, is just something that I live with. But again, I took that and I went into the jails, and part of me was like, what makes somebody like do what they did to me, or what getting in the mind of that. And clearly I wasn't going to go into the men's prison, but how can I help people in some whatever way it was, that giving them a sense of self or self-respect through how they looked and hearing stories.
Right.
That's what really got me into doing that.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was thinking, really remembering sort of hearing these parts of your story and learning them from you. And I found myself, when I was thinking about the women's prison part, I realized that I actually have this belief that most of the women who are in prison shouldn't be there. And so it was just a very interesting thing to me to sort of realize, because I was thinking about, how was it scary for you? And did it feel like self-imposed exposure therapy, or were you not, it sounds like, not worried about the potential violence?
It was. I mean, there were times where certainly where I started out in the first year or two doing it, by the time I was in year 20, I'd kind of encountered a lot of different situations, or where you would be in there and there'd be a lot of attitude or, maybe energy that wasn't exactly as welcoming. But then you'd have, because people knew that I would come once a month, you'd have people go, "Hey, man, like she's just here to help,"
Right,
Or
right.
so. And then I
Did
started getting a level of, I could tell, self-respect
uh-huh.
from, people that they could see I was there really not to sell my cosmetics or
Right.
do anything, but just, and then a few times I would have a local TV station go with me in there, or the LA Times, just to see how it was really making a difference for people in their lives once they did get out.
Did you share your teenage experiences, your trauma with them?
No, I didn't. I really didn't. The thing is, I didn't want to make it about me. I really wanted it to be all about them, about hearing other people's stories, helping them. That's really the whole reason that I was there. And you really do get a sense, back to what you were saying about some people, do you feel like they should be in there? I mean, clearly I'm not the judge or the jury and didn't know all the sides of people's stories, but there were some times where you felt like, it makes me sad this person's here because
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like maybe they should be here. Or women that were in there about to give birth. And,
Yeah.
you picture a lot of the stories of what people are going to go through and what they are going through. But I wanted to at least hopefully give what I could give, was in something that when they were able to get out, that maybe they would benefit from.
Did you ever connect with any of the other victims from the pillowcase rapists? Have you guys
No,
ever?
no, I
Yeah.
really didn't. No,
Yeah.
I just was navigating my own kind of program of how I needed to get through it for
Yeah.
myself through therapy. And maybe there was some point of this, exposure therapy, going to the jails. I mean, I just kind of worked my own process, and I moved out. Obviously, I didn't go back in my room. I was 17. I didn't graduate high school. I didn't go to college. So it definitely changed the trajectory of my life. But looking at it now, it all worked out okay
Right.
in terms of
Right.
not having that college
Gosh.
degree. It was just another way that my life unfolded.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about that a lot from my own experiences of, just I never know the right way to say it, that it doesn't, land in the wrong way, but this idea of, okay, was my karma just so complicated that I had to go through this other big thing in order to place me here and place me there to have this role?
Yeah.
And that sense of like, oh, okay, next time let's do it easier, right? Or
Yeah.
because I wouldn't be sitting here having a podcast, having a conversation with you if what had happened
Yeah.
in 98 hadn't happened.
Yeah.
So it's never, I mean, I never, and I'm sure you neither, I never look at it as a silver lining or anything like
Right.
that. But it is, I think when we get through these, and everybody has their own version
Yeah.
of it, but when we get through these really intense traumatic moments and we're farther down the road, you look back and you go, the only way I could have gotten
Yeah,
here in this
exactly.
lifetime, right? Like this way was this.
And it's hard because at times, we think about like, oh my gosh, the universe is bringing
Yeah.
this right now. Interesting, like just dealing with it. And it does, yeah, there is definitely what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I know a lot of things where I thought, oh, I just do not know how, to navigate this. Obviously, when we talk about my daughter's diagnosis,
Yeah.
but there's been so many things that I've just said, okay, you know what? And I draw back from experience of like, okay, well, you got through that and you remember when you did this. So you're going to navigate this one, and you are that warrior or whatever self-talk. It doesn't mean that we still don't like get, at least me, like curl up in a ball on the bathroom
Yeah,
floor.
me
And then,
too.
yeah. And then it's just that we get up. There's a lot of people, and that's the part you want to just help people to get up, because a lot of people curl up in that ball and they can't get up.
Yeah.
And I want people to go, look, I got up a lot of times and it's hard, but what's the alternative,
Right.
really?
I think the most it's interesting, and this is why I think work with young people is so important. And I actually was thinking that I think you should do some sort of a children's book and maybe a teen YA version
Right.
of We All Worry Now What? No,
Yeah.
really, because I think that almost the most important thing is the first time. The first time you get yourself back
Yeah.
up when you just think, I can't. There's
Yeah.
no way. Like, how can I
Yeah.
wake up, face the world, whatever, all the things? Because then the next time it happens, somewhere in there,
Yeah.
you have, oh, I've been here before. I
Yeah.
got up before. It got better. Now it's fucked up again.
Yeah.
And I feel this way, but I had that cycle once.
Yeah.
And I think the more you have that cycle,
Yeah.
the easier it's sort of, not easier, but I think it's like the refraction period
Yeah.
is smaller.
Yeah.
Like you get up faster,
Yeah,
maybe.
absolutely. I mean, I used to, when we were talking about going to the jails, but at the same time, I was doing Children of the Night, which
What's
is
that?
still an organization. I think it's still in the post office in Van Nuys. It's Dr. Lois Lee. She used to rescue kids off the street from prostitution.
Wow.
So I would go in there and work with like getting like the war paint off these like 12 and 13-year-old girls that, I'd see cigarette burns on their arms from, I mean, just the stuff that went on and trying to help empower them. And same thing with McLaren Hall. I went there, abused kids. So working with young people, especially, you really want to, it's always just anything that you can do to help people through sharing your own experience or just showing them your heart and being authentic, not lecturing or talking down, but sort of like being right there in it with them.
And you are. I've learned these different parts of you over time, and so to sit here and see the totality and now to think, oh my gosh, that wasn't even just it, because then you had with Allie, your daughter, when she was 13.
And that was really, I mean, that was going to be like, now think about having to draw from everything in my life was now Allie being dosed and given possibly 4 to 6 years to live from having,
Okay, so she was diagnosed with
NMO.
NMO.
Neuromyelitis optica.
Right.
Now that even getting to that diagnosis it started with an eyeball headache and she was losing some vision and color. And I just thought, oh, she has an eye infection.
Right.
Go to the eye doctor and get some drops. And the one doctor, after we went to the eye doctor, who then said, you need to see a neuro-ophthalmologist, and then, going to a neurologist. And, all of a sudden you find yourselves going down this path of like, what's going on here, And he was checking boxes as he was taking blood, and he checked one called neuromyelitis optica. And I said, oh, what's that? And he goes, I don't even know why I've checked that box. That would be a nightmare. And I remember him saying that, and then finding out that the results came back and, that's what she had. And, basically told me, there was little known, so the information at the time.
Right, because it's a rare, is it still considered a rare
I don't
disease?
think it's as rare now.
Okay,
because
of the work.
Because of the work I've been doing for the last, almost 17 years. That it was so misdiagnosed and still is as MS. And it was known as Devick's disease, something different. So working with the Mayo Clinic, they came up with an assay that is a blood test to tell you if you have it. But there was a lot of misdiagnosis, misinformation. It was a very scary thing. And so obviously I transitioned like overnight. It wasn't even a transition. It was like closing the book on, as I say, makeup and mascara and opening the book of medicine.
Right.
And I thought, great. Okay, well, I've been making lip gloss. Sure, I can cure an autoimmune disease, right? And I thought, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to work with some of the best minds. I'm going to find the best minds. And I went to Stanford, met with a group of advisors there, and just basically were telling them my story. I was really trying to figure out having to, find a cure.
Right.
And people that would get on board with me. And I said, I have a checkbook. I worked with the Mayo Clinic. I said, but everybody is going to have to collaborate and work together. We're going to change the way, because everybody was telling me in medicine, people don't share information. They
very siloed.
It's very siloed. And I said, I'm not spending my money for siloed. And I've literally been working at what I call the speed of life since I started.
Yeah.
And I knew that losing my daughter was not an option.
Nope.
I was now out of the world of makeup.
Mm-hmm.
Although the crazy thing is, and I don't even know if I'm sure I probably told you this, but realizing that when you're doing research to actually find a cure for a disease, you need to have the blood and specimens, right? And so I had to build my own biorepository, my own biobank,
Oh, wow.
and which I still have now.
Oh my
And
gosh.
this
So wait,
I
what
w-
is that? What does that mean? What does that
What
entail?
that means is basically you need to have, if you're going to do research on any kind of condition, you're going to need like blood samples. You need blood from patients. You need to be able to have material to work with, right? Well, that didn't exist in this. So basically, I remember when I first started, when I first learned this from some of the institutions, they're like, well, we'll do research, but we need saliva, we need blood. And I was like, oh, great. So now I have to figure out how to build a
Where did you
blood bank
find
and a
this?
biorepository. So I hired a nurse who literally, Martha, would go with a cooler, and we would find wherever the rare patients were at the time that we would find, and she would go there. And I remember trying to attract, since mostly autoimmune disease is women, I'd say, I'll give you a blush for your blood. So crazy. And
I didn't
it
know
was,
that about
yeah.
that most autoimmune diseases were women.
yeah, most-
yeah, I didn't
yeah.
know that.
Yeah,
It's
like
really
7 out of
But
10
Victoria,
beyond.
where did you I'm listening to this. Where did you find the strength to not give up?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, to find the strength to go start to do a thing that you've never done before, and
Yeah.
building
it's-
this.
Yeah, it's called looking in the face of my daughter
Yeah.
and watching what she was going through, which is her story to tell. But that's what kept me going.
Yeah.
It was really that simple. There was never an option, even to this day, to have it be any other way. As a mom, looking in your child's face and seeing what she was dealing with and the challenges she was having, it just wasn't an option. So I was motivated beyond. And then I realized that so as I started to grow my group of researchers and scientists, right, by just basically being, hey, you guys, you tell me what you need and I will go and get it. Let's build this family together. So if you need a certain kind of researcher, or you tell me what you need and I will find it. And I started building this group because I really needed their brain trust, right? The only way I could find that was, in my opinion, was through a shared, real, true sense of humanity. Like, there was a reason these people get into it. There was a reason that the pharmaceutical companies, I still had to find, they weren't just going to be in my mind. If I just made them out to be big pharma, right?
Right.
That only wanted money, I wasn't going to be able to, appeal to them or get them encouraged to be part of the foundation unless I really realized they're also human beings, right? But I also had to understand, what are their needs? They need to see how they can make money. Okay, and I need you, pharmaceutical companies, to see all these patients that you're helping.
Yeah.
So I really built a bridge between all the pharmaceutical companies and patients, and brought together every year these researchers and scientists from over 40 countries worldwide, patients, clinicians, and then we really had Patient Day was its own day.
Tell me I want to go back for a second because I don't think I ever had this fully in my mind. Allie's 13.
Yeah.
And the diagnosis, they said her prognosis was
Potentially 4 to 6 years, I mean, because they didn't have a lot of information. I mean, this is going back where you would Google it and, there really, it was a bad situation, so they didn't know for sure that would happen. But, I heard from some doctors like, well, if I were you, I would just, just enjoy the time. And, and you're like, no, I mean, and then they would tell you that within a matter of months, she'll probably, be blind. She'll be paralyzed. And
now it's decades later.
I've gotten 3 drugs made.
Right.
Different
that have helped
therapies.
so many of the people
worldwide. These are
worldwide.
drugs that are now not just even used in NMO, but in other conditions. So, I learned so much along the way that, if I were sitting here, like I could be talking about small molecule screening and,
No,
all
thank
the,
you.
come on, what? We're not going to just talk about
I mean, I am the
blush.
daughter of a doctor,
Yeah, but I
you
mean, it
know,
was that kind of thing. I mean, I had to really go deep and really understand
yeah.
it so I could decide what to fund, what not to fund, because God bless scientists, but they could research the head of a pin. You
Right.
have to think of everything was for me had to be translational in terms of bench to bedside, like what was on critical path that I knew eventually, okay, my daughter can take this IV or this pill or whatever it's going to be, and all these people that are going to make a difference. And at some point, Allie was very clear and said, Mom, this isn't just about us anymore. It really became about all those faces that you saw at
Yeah.
the symposium, patient day, that you see the families, you see the little kids, because these kinds of things can hit the littlest kids and older people. There's no real necessarily rhyme or reason for autoimmune disease.
Yeah. Oh, now I just remembered something I forgot from your list of accomplishments.
Huh.
The X Prize that you won twice,
Yes,
right?
won the X Prize twice. Yep. So, where you have about 2 minutes to, make your pitch. It's a little bit,
Right,
it's a little
because
bit nutty.
that's what your pitch was around autoimmune,
Yeah,
right?
autoimmune disease.
Right.
Working to cure autoimmune disease in the world
Yeah.
and understand it. And if somebody would have told me, honestly, that at some point I would be at the Vatican with, in the Vatican, it was crazy. They're playing my infomercial.
Oh my
And
gosh,
I'm
really?
clips from
In
my
the Vatican?
Yeah, in the Vatican.
Oh my
And there was this,
God.
and I was just remember just having this literally surreal moment of the video playing, and Tony Robbins, who I knew from the way I met my husband, was Tony and I were keynote speakers at a very early infomercial sort of convention thing.
Right.
And there's Tony back at the Vatican talking about feeding billions of people, and I'm about to receive this award from the Pope for my work around the world in advocacy for autoimmune disease. And I just remember thinking, God, if somebody would have told me, from
Yeah.
beauty school
Little
to
Vicky.
little Vicky from now the Vatican, with my infomercial
Yeah.
playing, to this, beautiful acknowledgement that they gave me at the time. It's really been just an extraordinary journey, but
Yeah.
I'm not done, because to me, done will be not just therapies, it'll be like cures. It'll be
Right.
like
Right.
what I'm calling, in the Biden world, there was moonshots for cancer. I'm like, I trademark everything,
Yeah,
right?
smartly.
Cure shot. So
Yeah.
cure shot.
Oh, that's great.
Because
That's
I think we don't
good.
have to go to the moon to find cures
Yeah.
here, because I realized through doing all this work, just connecting people, when you get people together, everyone was like, you're never going to be able to get a drug made. That takes 50 years. And there's this whole thing called the Valley of Death, where most drugs don't make it across the Valley of Death to actually become therapies. And I was like, well, that's foreboding, but I'm going to get these drugs made. And a lot of heroes from the world of NMO that were willing to test it and be part of these clinical trials and things like that. But when people work together, it's really pretty extraordinary. You can get a lot of shit done.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm going to send you to Washington, girl.
Yeah. Let's go. Let's go.
Go fix Congress.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note that Allie is thriving.
Yes.
And so is an extraordinary young woman.
Yeah.
And
so positive. Like,
So
I
positive.
think of, I've learned so much from her that I think so much of her doing as well as she's doing. And I really try to convey that as well on our patient days. Her positive attitude. She was early on, she said, Mom, I know you're going to figure this out. And I'm going to live my life. I think when she heard that, she didn't know at the time when they, to have your child here, that they don't know what kind of time could look like or how it could manifest, that kind of condition. She just lives life. I mean,
she inspires me
Yeah.
because I think I have a tendency, even having read your book still, to worry
Yeah.
a lot.
Yep.
And to feel kind of like I'm making up for lost time and I need to work hard. And not that
Yeah.
she doesn't work hard, but Allie really she finds joy in the moment and she really lives life.
Yes.
And I need that reminder so much
Yeah.
because it's not only just those reminders to be grateful, but it's really, you know, I find I kind of only do it at Disneyland, this sort
Yeah.
of abandonment of
Yeah.
all the other stuff and just
Yeah.
really be in that moment of joy.
Yeah.
But Allie does that all the time. And it's extraordinary to think that she and you both have
Yeah.
lived with this in different ways,
Yeah.
as does Bill, your
Yeah.
husband, and the
Yeah.
rest of your family too.
Right.
But there is that it's such a reminder
Yeah.
about choosing,
Yeah,
about
it
choosing
is.
how you deal with what's handed to you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she really does. She makes that choice. And, even writing the book, it's like, trust me, I have to read my own book all the time.
Yeah.
And worry.
Well,
It's not
let's
like all
talk
the,
about it a
yeah,
little. I mean, and then I want to get back into like, it's amazing that you and sort of reclaim no makeup and come
Yeah.
all the way back full circle. But
Yeah.
let's talk about the book a little.
I wanted to write down, in the book prior to this one, I wrote a book called The Power of Rare. Allie and I, first, I should back up a little, say that while Allie and I were going through this, we each wrote Saving Each Other, which we wrote separately. So Allie never liked to, as part of her dealing with it, she wrote separately how she was navigating. And I wrote my pieces. So until the book was done and our pages were put together, I never really knew how Allie was dealing with things. So it's really I call it like my memoir. It's a really powerful story, and hearing from Allie and from me. And then again, it was sort of like I did with the makeup. It was sort of like, okay, here's the story. Now, The Power of Rare, the book that I wrote after, was really the how-to, right? So that was more people wanting to know other foundations, wanting to know, how did you actually get drugs made? What was your way? And so I really wrote what I called my roadmap and blueprint toward cures, how I've so far been able to get these drugs made. So after that, I wanted people, this last book now is We All Worry Now What, has all been like, how did I do all of that while I've still really had anxiety, crippling anxiety, where it kept me from doing a lot of things earlier in my life, to, dealing with depression, the sadness, all of that. And writing, this is what I do. And I still have to do that. And I write that in the book. It's not like, oh, I'm writing this and I'm cured now. And I have to sort of do the things I talk about, like zooming out and trying to see above what's happening to me and look down and try to set an intention and have that picture of how I want this. I always envisioned, oh, Allie's going to be on a drug or a therapy, or there was always going to be a picture I formed in my mind of how I want it to look. And so I still have to go through all of these steps that I write about in the book, like building my tribe, my friends, when I need to, call you, Monica, or call my friends and go, oh, I'm struggling, or help you with whatever you're going through, or any of my pals. So it's a daily, it's a job, I work it.
I think the ways that society often serves things to us as a complete process, and it's sort of, oh, this is the success story, rather than the kind of spiral of that you constantly go through those things of, okay, once you've had this success, well, you may fail at doing this again, and then you're going to have another success. And I mean this in terms of the worrying, right? It's interesting because I'm hearing you, and we've talked about and I've read the book, so the zooming out.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it almost feels like the positive side of the coin of dissociating, and I know from my younger things about dissociating. And so I'm just curious if that feels yoked
that is
for you.
So right on. And yes, you that's exactly right. Because there's when bad things were happening to me, disassociating. And so I probably have really perfected that, being able to disassociate, right? We both of us. So, but then there's the positive side of it, where you can disassociate in a positive way, where I have the ability to zoom out and look at it. But yeah, that was a big thing, where you're turning that disassociation into, something that can be, it's a good skill, and at times not a good thing,
right?
So it cuts both ways.
No,
but it really has been something that has also allowed me to move through things and sometimes not move through it and be stuck.
Yeah. Now, I know that you were writing the book at the same time that you were stepping back into makeup moguldom.
Yeah.
So what drew you to wanting to kind of bring no makeup back?
Yeah, wow, definitely full circle. So, I mean, I always wanted to, even when I was doing makeup, my whole thing was no makeup. I was talking about that in the 80s and I trademarked it by early 2000s. It was fully trademarked. And, that's been my thing. That's how I created my makeup. So when Allie was diagnosed, before that, I was really in my career. I was selling as I said, 13 years of infomercials, Victoria Jackson Cosmetics, doing my no makeup. When she was diagnosed, it was really abrupt. It was like I said, like the next day, it was close that book. That chapter's over. And I started what's really been the last 17 years, my new life. But I really have missed, I've been in, and it's been interesting. I went from foundation, one kind of foundation to another kind of foundation, right? And I was also back in labs. I was in my makeup, you're in labs. Now I'm in medical labs. I was like lab to lab. By the way, I saw a lot of women in the labs and I still always wanted to go, have you thought about this for your eyes? Or, and they're like, we're trying to cure a disease here. You're talking to me about my blush again. But it was always there, I thought, well, if it's 17 years later, I'm not going to come back until I've made a foundation again that I think rivals what I had before, but even better. Because now there's clean beauty and new technologies and all that. And so kind of off to the side, I've been working on making, a foundation, another base that I thought would be incredible. And I made, this one is made in Italy. And honestly, it's the best product I've ever made.
I love it.
I've made 600 products. This is like the best product. And so I said, if I can come up with a great product, all shades, I'm going to basically come out with it again. And I'd been also, during my infomercial days, I went on QVC. So I did 10 years of QVC back in the day. And now I'm like back on QVC, which was crazy, like seeing myself 30 years later back on QVC.
Yeah.
My old pictures of me like in a mini skirt on QVC now. I'm like me, almost turning 70, here on QVC. But I love it and people love the product.
What have you seen? You've had such an interesting landscape of women in business too. So, I mean, what have you seen in terms of how the makeup industry has changed or how you've seen women in business change over the 30 years?
I'm seeing a lot more women in business than when I started. And I remember being in YPO, like Young Presidents Organization, and there was like 2 women in there. I was one of them. I mean, so there's a lot more women, which is great. I feel like there's a lot more women that seem much more comfortable in themselves, not having to exist in a man's world, but existing in their world and being a woman. And so I love it. I mean, I think just the fact that I'm seeing more women and more comfortable, I'm not saying we don't have a long way to go, but we've sure come a long way for sure.
Well, or even just the producers and I were talking yesterday about this and this conversation, and even this idea of that when you started, it was just more unheard of for a woman to be able to kind of be loud and proud about her accomplishments too. And that's changed a bit. And so how you would have even kind of remolded how you think about yourself, how you talk about yourself, see yourself, that's all really interesting.
Yeah. And I mean,
that trajectory.
Especially when your worst fears are realized, as I said early on, that in a lot of ways freed me though. I just put it out there. I just go for it and people are going to say what they say. And it's, now like because I didn't grow up with Instagram and all these, I don't read comments. I don't.
Smart girl.
Yeah, I don't, because I think it just gets in your head, all of that,
it does.
so I try to take away a lot of the other outside noise. And that does free me up to sort of just go and do it. Because people go, well, how do you just do it? And I go, I think it's because I've got so much else going on that I'm just talking to myself that once I get my own like kind of rhythm down, then I just go.
Yeah, you know, it's still really impressive because I can have the vision of
Yeah.
something and I don't go.
Well, and by the way, I would take issue with that too, because you are sitting here right now. You have gone and you're doing this, which was probably not the easiest thing
No.
to do.
No.
Right?
And I am doing, I just feel like I could do more.
Yeah.
So it's,
Okay. We all can do more, but I always like to say to people, including anybody like sitting across from you, you're here, you're doing it. I'm sure there was definitely, I know there was
Yeah,
big
you
moments
know.
of going like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And you push through, you're here, you're doing it, you're doing amazing. So
Thank you.
I'm proud of you.
Oh, thanks. There's just such a great quote from your book that it's, if fear is the seed that gives rise to worry, rumination is the water that makes it grow.
Yeah, it's true. Because don't we all just ruminate? We
Yeah.
just go, and it keeps you in that circle. And I was thinking about that, and I spoke with Jay Shetty, who was really lovely. And I remember him saying, like, you got to think about, are you watering the seeds or the weeds, And
Oh, that's good.
rumination is like watering, those weeds, like it just goes round and round. And so I do think about that a lot. Am I watering seeds or weeds during the day when that anxiety starts coming up, or you ruminate and you start all the what ifs and you go, circular around things. So it's kind of how to break that loop, the rumination,
Yeah.
that loop where it just keeps us from just ruminating and thinking and building the whole argument as to why something isn't going to work, as opposed to just trying to do something different.
Yeah.
And I can get into that loop too, and I have to work hard to break it. Like, what am I watering here?
Yeah. I try to make all these, like I actually did it recently with my ring. I try to find different ways to remind myself, like my mantra is relaxed, centered, and expansive. And so I had that engraved inside
okay.
my ring,
I love that.
which I've had the ring for a few years. And I just thought, okay, what's a physical way I can remind myself?
Yeah.
So trying to do those things, does that ever?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I've never had tattoos, and I put a little tattoo after Allie was diagnosed on my back saying against all odds,
Yeah.
like little, that was my little thing, like
Yeah,
against
it's
all
just like a
odds. You just-
declaration to the
Yeah.
universe, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think whatever that is
Yeah.
for somebody, whether that's putting we love crystals, a crystal in your bag, or tattooing that little saying, or whatever it is I think all of it, it really matters, to take the time to think and develop like that recipe for yourself. What works for you that helps you to, to be that best version of yourself. I always hear from people at patient day going, "Oh, Victoria, I'm not like you. You have a big voice in LA and I'm just a small voice in Tennessee," or wherever it is. And I'm like, "No, you're not." Like I work to help bring that out in them. That's the whole point is, you don't have to be that small voice. We all have voice.
Yeah. No, it's so true. The last question I'm going
Yes.
to ask you is, what is something that you are working on reclaiming right now? And it could be a place or a thing or part of your identity. It could
Yeah.
be anything.
So I'm working on reclaiming something that I haven't had,
Okay.
joy.
Yeah.
So I am working to claim that because I haven't had a lot of joy. I've been such a solving problems or working through a lot of things. I really just want to sort of, as I'm turning 70 is a big milestone for me. It's really to sort of let myself have some joy, do some different things, travel where travel's been a very big anxiety for me.
That's something
you
I've
know.
watched you.
Yeah.
I've watched you work through
Yep.
every time we fly together.
Yep, getting on a plane. So I'd say really trying to claim some joy for myself. And, there's wonderful reclaiming in getting back into the cosmetic world
Yeah.
right now. I mean, that's to be able to reclaim a moment in time that, was a long time ago, and to be able to bring that back and sort of the full circle kind of magic moment I'm in with all of that is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, it kills two birds with one stone, brings you joy.
Yeah.
Right. It's a lot of
Brings me
work,
joy.
but also brings joy.
Yes.
So,
As did this today.
oh, thank you. Thanks for doing this. This was so lovely.
Thank you. Really fun.